What is up, guys? Dirty Boot Sports, and we are back with another interview. This is our first one in a month now, probably, or two.
A while now, yeah.
Actually, I think the last one was Ross Jackson.
Yeah.
So yeah, today we are keeping it in the Locked On New Orleans family, and we're bringing in Jake Madison. Say what's up.
How's it going, you guys? Thanks for having me on to talk some Pelicans hoops here.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we're glad to have you. NBA is at center stage now. So football is gone. It's basketball's time. And man, this past weekend was some great basketball. I had a blast watching. I even watched the Iowa women's game. Great game. Iowa, Indiana. Caitlin Clark you knew that ball was going in at the timeout.
Caitlin Clark is legit.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is.
Her for her shooting ability.
Honestly, yeah.
Stick her in a corner.
Yeah.
She and the LSU team, I think, have gotten so many more people into like women's hoops than they have been before. And it's a real fun game to actually watch. I know for a long time it was kind of like the butt of jokes of things. And then you really start to watch it and you're like, this is fantastic basketball.
It really is. It really is. So yeah, let's just get right on into this. First off, tell us about you and your journey to where you are now.
Yeah, I grew up a huge basketball fan, and I host the Locked On Pelicans podcast. So it's 5 days a week. I don't know the exact number of shows I've done now with this, but it's in like two or 3,000, something like that is the number of shows that I've done. And the show does well. Locked On Saints does well. Locked On as a group is probably the second biggest podcast network in the United States in terms of sports. So it's really fun to be part of. And it's kind of like the culmination of a long journey I've had in sports media. I went to undergrad at Tulane and studied, journalism and other things and kind of wanted to be in sports, but took a bit of a circuitous route there. It's not an easy industry to kind of make it in, especially if you actually want to make some money and be able to live off of that. It can be pretty brutal. You look at things like Sports Illustrated doing a number of layoffs recently and the like. So, after a couple of years of just like working and trying to make money, I worked in finance. I bought then Hornets season tickets and realized I wanted to like get back to kind of being involved on, with basketball, with sports on like a deeper level. And so having a bit of that background, I applied to a blog. It was called Swarm and Sting. It was the fan-sided blog. It's now Pelicans Debrief. And they were like, yeah, you can come on and write for free, which is not the easiest thing to do, but I was in a position where I was able to do that. And I've kind of like worked my way up from there. From there, I started working for Hornets 24/7, which got rebranded as Bourbon Street Shots, and basically ran that and produced the majority of content for a couple of years before Locked On, offered me this opportunity, and I kind of jumped to it. And that's when money started getting made. And that's always a good thing in this industry, I think. So it's been kind of like, progression, kind of going from step to step to step and kind of learning new skills and refining skills along the way. And now I host, the Pelican Show, and it's a lot of fun, even when the team's not too good.
Yeah. I mean, you're living the dream, honestly, with just talking basketball. And that's all I want to do. So I know that. And with this podcast, we've been doing it since Memorial Day, and we've kind of, I guess, grown to love it as we go, of just being able to come in once a week or twice a week and just talk sports. Like, it's just awesome to do. And also New Orleans with the freaking Swarm and Sting and Bourbon Shots. Bourbon Street Shots
is awesome.
Those are just awesome names.
It's just like amazing puns and everything, right?
Yeah. So Peyton,
are you from Louisiana?
No, I'm from Los Angeles originally, and then I went to Tulane, and I've stayed there ever since. So I moved to New Orleans in 2004. So I've been there pre-Katrina. I've lived in New Orleans longer than I lived in Los Angeles at this point. So I'm not from there, but I think I count enough as a local at this point, hopefully.
Yeah. If you've been through Katrina, you count.
Yeah, you're good.
Right.
Yeah, you didn't leave from Katrina, you stayed there. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've like earned it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, Peyton, you want to get it started with?
Yeah.
Oh no, we suck again.
I'm gonna start out with this, and I might be wrong on this, and you might correct me on this. I feel like, yes, Zion's injuries are obviously his hurt against. Yes, the team is built around his game and his ability. I'm not sure if Billy Green's answer. Am I wrong for that?
No, I'm planning out the episode of Locked On Pelicans I'm going to record after this and kind of then post, and it hits on a lot of that. Losing Zion Williamson, who's your focal point, is going to derail things, and that's going to change some things. But this team has enough talent there with Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, and Jonas Valanciunas to not look like they did against the Orlando Magic. It's one thing to lose. It's another thing to lose like you did to the Knicks, to the Magic, where just you look at them and you feel it through the TV or even being in the building that like something's wrong and something's kind of deeply wrong with them right now. During the 10-game losing streak that the Pelicans had, I wasn't too concerned about the team. I was like, I'm feeling okay with all of this. There were a number of games that could have won during that. They looked competent and they looked like a team that was still trying to kind of figure some things out. And they were doing that without both Zion and Ingram at times. Right now, though, I don't see the same team out there on the court, and I think that's kind of the biggest problem. And Willie Green had a couple of quotes in his post-game presser after the loss to the Orlando Magic, right? He said, down the stretch, we put the ball in Brandon and CJ's hands, and that's kind of what we want to do. We have to knock down shots. And then he went on to say, the game comes down to executing and limiting mistakes. Playing harder, playing more together was there, and we want to work from there. It's just a tough loss on our home floor. If you watch that final stretch in the fourth quarter, especially after they tied the game, none of that was good. Like none of that was good. There was no good offense there. It's not about like executing that better, because even if you execute that perfectly, it's still bad offense. And so you're starting to kind of see for the first time, I think this season, a flawed process, a flawed approach that the coaching staff is taking. And if the head coach is going to come in after that and be like, no, this is exactly what we want to do, this is all good and we can be better, that makes me concerned. That sounds like a coach that's too stubborn or doesn't want to see the actual problem here. And you see that in the rotations and some of the lineups that they put out there. Herb Jones shooting 3-3-pointers in the fourth quarter shouldn't be shots that they necessarily watch.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, he's shooting 28% from three. That's a shot the opponent wants you to take. Just because it's an open three-pointer to a not good three-point shooter, that's not good. And I'm starting to see a process problem, and I don't know if the Pelicans really have an answer to that right now based on what the coach is saying.
Yeah, Herb's the one that drives me crazy. And I know he's out there for defensive purposes.
Like, know your role.
Yeah.
But
he really even aggravates on the defense. He's not really fouls a lot. I feel like he's out of position a good bit. But yeah, like you're not a 3-point shooter. Like you're taking Trey Murphy's minutes away. Like I'd rather have Murphy out there. Yeah, you might give up a little less on defensive end, but Murphy can do more on the offensive end, which we need.
You have to score to win.
Yeah.
Like
and Murphy's shooting.
Well, it's both, right? Like. It's both, right? You say Herb's taking Trey Murphy's minutes. I mean, that's not Herb's fault, right? Like that's the coach's fault. He's just out there kind of doing what he's told, right? Like, and that's where it's tough to find a balance. You just said like, right, you need to get offense and score, but you also had to get stops. Banchero went down and scored on 3 or 4 straight possessions from the mid-range, and so you need to find a balance of offense and defense, but certainly putting out both Herb Jones and Josh Richardson isn't giving you either of those things. You need to find the right kind of balance there. And that's something that the Pelicans are really struggling with right now. And I think that's leading to a lot of kind of confusion. I think that's also something that's really kind of getting in these players' heads a little bit. You don't want Herb Jones taking that shot, but that if you don't have another shooter out there, he's got to rip it, right? And you've just got to kind of hope he makes it, because you need someone to punish the defense for leaving these guys wide open. And so that's where it comes to kind of like a flawed process and what they're doing. And if you put Trey out there, are they going to completely sag off of him? Probably not. But you still do need to find stops. So do you maybe have to take a guy like CJ McCollum out there, who shot 1 of 8 from 3 in that game, and put in a player like Dyson Daniels, and make some of these hard decisions on things. You also saw, going back to Banchero and everything, at one point they doubled him a little bit, forced the ball out of his hands. It forced the Magic to take a timeout. And then other times they were like, nah, you can just do your thing, man. And he just went and completely burned the team. I think he had 29 points in that game. Why are they just, there just doesn't seem to be a plan to what they're doing. And that's kind of the frustrating thing. Willie Green's kind of putting his guys out there on the court, and that's just not good enough right now. Why are you sometimes doubling Banchero, but sometimes not doubling Banchero? And the times you don't do it, he very clearly burns you. So it seems prudent to do that more often. They're not doing things like that. So it's like one mistake that keeps compounding on another, that can compounds on another. And it's kind of this just vicious circle that it's going to take the head coach needing to break. And he seems to be unwilling to do that right now.
Right, and another thing that also drives me crazy, and I was hoping the trade deadline would make a move of some sort. And I know guys' names have been hurt, but I feel like we need a true point guard in this roster. We don't really have a true point guard roster. And I was hoping we could have made some kind of a move at the trade deadline to get that, and we obviously didn't. Is that a position that you would like to see, or if not, what trade move were hoping to see other than the one we got?
Yeah, I think a point guard would be fine. I think you need another kind of creator, whether that's a true point guard a la Chris Paul and a guy that pulls the strings, or if it's just an instant offense kind of guy, and that could be on the wing too. I think either one is kind of what you need. They're playing 2-on-5 offensively right now. You have CJ and Brandon Ingram, and then 3 guys that the defense just doesn't respect whatsoever. And one of those guys might even be Jonas Valanciunas, because they just don't get him the ball, and he's an afterthought in everything that they're doing offensively right now. So you needed another guy that at least gets you playing 3-on-3 on off, or 3-on-5 on offense instead of 2-on-5. So, it's something like that, right? You just need another credible offensive threat, whether that's a passer, whether that's a connector, whether that's a scorer, whether that's a creator, whatever it is. You need one of those archetypes out there on the court beyond just being a spot up 3-point shooter, unless it's a super high volume guy. But you have that in Trey Murphy, who's buried on the bench. So that would have been a good thing to do, and on my show in the lead up to the trade deadline, I had been talking a lot about the Pelicans' future salary cap concerns and the luxury tax potentially, because they're projected to be into it. So them kind of making that move for Josh Richardson, which was as much of a salary dump as it was bringing in Josh Richardson, didn't surprise me. And I think it's just kind of like a wake-up call to a lot of people to just how, unfortunately, sometimes small market teams have to operate in the NBA that don't have tons of money coming in like a New York team would, like an LA team would. And it's just kind of one of those sobering facts you have to accept that sucks. Gail Benson should be spending the money, but in reality, she's not going to be. So it's just, that's kind of, I think, what you saw ended up happening at the trade deadline. And I hope, if we're trying to be optimistic about it, that they feel they can get a better target and go after a better type of player this offseason, when there weren't a ton of guys truly that you would have wanted to have made a huge difference. Gary Trent Jr. was never going to be available from the Raptors. You could have overpaid for Bogdanovich from the Detroit Pistons, but on the wrong side of 30 and making $20+ million, I don't know if that's the guy that you want to go, 15-20 million into the luxury tax for. Malik Beasley was a guy they definitely talked about alongside Jared Vanderbilt. That offer didn't end up getting accepted. So they tried to do certain things. I hope it's more of, okay, there was no reason to spend just to spend right now, that they're planning on kind of doing something this offseason. But you can very clearly see they have to do something this offseason, especially if you don't feel you're going to get, 80% of the season from Zion Williamson or Brandon Ingram with the amount of time that those guys miss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Pelicans fan. I'm actually a Warriors fan. Have been since 2012. But hey, I'm not a bandwagon.
Oh, shocking when they got good, right? Like, oh my God.
Hey, Harrison Barnes fan, and then he made me a Warriors fan. I swear. You can ask this man.
Okay.
It's a factual statement. It is.
Yeah, I just got really lucky.
Yeah, you did.
Well, for 1 year.
Yeah. But I was trying to talk these guys. I'm like, to make the Pelicans a real legitimate contender, in my opinion, I think in the future you've got to see a closing lineup that involves Zion at the 5 and BI at the 4. And then around them, you bring in shooters, 3-and-D type guys. Josh Richardson he's along that lines, but he's probably about as basic as you can get. I mean, he plays defense well. He shoots the 3 well. But I think a guy Beasley can really shoot it. He can't really play defense. But I think that's what the Pelicans need to try to go after in the offseason. Would you disagree with that? Or
not necessarily? I think, okay, I'll put it in your terms, right? Like, they want to try and find their own death lineup with the Warriors. And that's much easier said than done. And
Yes.
I talked about this offseason, right? The key to that is how do you guard opposing centers at that point? And what worked for that Warriors team was Draymond Green being able to do that. And then the switchability too. And you see the Pelicans run a very similar defensive scheme to what that Warriors team did, which was switch 1 through 5. Draymond Green on a point guard, cool. Draymond Green on a center, cool. On a wing, no problem. Zion's going to get torched if he's on a point guard. He can handle some centers. On the wing, it's going to be iffy. He's been good defensively this year when he's played, but I don't think he's ready to do something like that. Now, you might have a guy on the roster that can do some of that, though, while still giving you enough shooting. And that's Trey Murphy. You know, at 6'10", if he bulks up a little bit, might be able to guard opposing centers, can switch probably like 2 through 5, something along those lines. He's not ready to take on that role just yet. They've tried to do kind of similar things like that with Larry Nance Jr. He's just not quite the shooter you need, but there's some ability to shoot from the perimeter, and he's a good switchable defender. That's why you've seen them close with him over Jonas Valanciunas. So in some combination, the closing lineup I think that they ideally view is Larry Nance Jr. out there, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum. And then that fifth guy is kind of really the question. It probably should be Trey Murphy. And you get shooting in BI in CJ McCollum and Trey Murphy out there, switchability. I think that can be enough to make it work, but it's going to be tough to basically put like Zion and 4 shooters out there unless you find like a Brook Lopez kind of guy who could do something like that. But that guy's not going to be available, and that's not the type of guy that they're going to be able to go and get. So I love the idea of it. You're not wrong on that. And that lineup would be crazy good. I just don't know how actually feasible it is to kind of find the type of player that necessarily unlocks that if Trey Murphy's not ready to go and do that yet, and he certainly isn't.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think it would bring upon is like, Zion's our 5, and he probably can't guard your Embiid or your even a Valanciunas type guy. But
ain't nobody stopping him.
But on the other end, is Zion going to be able to go and just do whatever he wants on him? So you kind of just get into a standoff of like, are you going to make the move to go small, or are you going to make the move to go big? And so that's what I think is very interesting about that. But yeah, and a Trey Murphy or a Herb Jones not taking a regression as he has this year, that kind of just freak athlete piece is very, very, it definitely help out.
Yeah, and look, Zion's a tough player to almost build lineups around because of just how unbelievably talented he is. When you look at the way that he scores at the rim at a near like 65 to 70%, that's the equivalent of a guy shooting like 47% from 3. So if you're just going based on plain percentages, right, you're going to double team Zion at the rim and leave an open shooter. I remember 2-3 years ago, I went on a Philadelphia 76ers podcast, and they asked me a question, and this is where we people tend to overthink things, and it made me laugh. So they were like, so how did the Philadelphia 76ers try and guard Zion and wall him off from the rim while also covering, a guy like JJ Redick out there on the perimeter? And I was like, the answer is you just leave JJ Redick open. Even though he's an amazing shooter, even at 40%, that's a less efficient shot than letting Zion get to the rim completely uncontested and just doing his thing. So you need to bring in shooters that are going to be reliable enough to make teams pay for consistently doubling or triple teaming Zion Williamson. And those, getting 4 of those out on the court at the same time is like not just a thing you can totally do. And that's what makes this kind of tough, is that Zion is so generational. Teams are going to put 3 guys on him. And unless you have other guys that are really going to burn teams, BI does it, CJ does it, but you still need to fill out 2 more roster spots with that, or 2 more, lineup spots with that. And that can be tough, especially if you still want to have like a balanced team with it. So it puts the Pelicans in a bit of an awkward spot, but that's a good problem to have, and just tells you how good Zion Williamson is.
Yeah, definitely.
I miss JJ.
He's a Duke
some
fan
people
over
do,
here,
some
so.
people don't. Okay.
That's the only reason I'm watching the Pelicans now. I'm not going to lie, is because they were basically Duke South for a little while there with JJ, BI, and Zion all together that year.
Oh, and Frank Jackson.
Frank Jackson was there. Yeah.
Frank Jackson. Don't forget Trajan Langdon too, the GM, the Alaskan assassin.
We actually met him at a game in Dallas, I want to believe.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't
even
even
met
know
him. Yeah. It was the game I went to go see JJ play in, and he was hurt.
Yeah, his back was hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know you don't have a lot
He got
of time
old
tonight,
fast.
but yeah. to kind of just go away from Pelicans a little bit. Okay. Yeah.
What draft pick's going to be better, ours or the Lakers?
Ooh. Look, the news that LeBron's going to be out for at least 2 weeks basically just tanks their season. So like we got a little lucky on that one for the Pelicans. So I still think they'll end up executing that pick swap, have the Lakers, and hopefully it'll end up being a lottery pick, which it looks like right now. I don't trust Anthony Davis to carry that team for minimum of 2, potentially to 4 weeks.
Both of them?
Yeah,
No, it's a swap. They'll get the better of the 2.
I didn't know that. Well, that sucks.
I'm hoping more like, is Zion going to be hopefully the next in the league where he was injured for the first 2 or 3 years and then all of a sudden he just got healthy and stays healthy? What's the feeling like?
That's what you're hoping for, right?
Yeah.
I don't want him to play again.
It's what you're hoping for.
Put him on the bench.
I think they're going to try and play him again. It's a hamstring. He wants to play. You know, when you look at all of his injuries, right? Like none of them are the same thing. The foot that kept him out all of last year is held up this year. That's a great sign. You know, he tore meniscus in his knee his rookie year. That hasn't happened again. It's just all different things. But hopefully he ends up being healthy.
Yeah. But to just kind of transition into an overall perspective of the NBA, hot topic right now, load management. Do you have any input on that or any thoughts of how you think the league is going right now, I guess?
I mean, look, the NBA still popularity is an all-time high, but you can definitely see concerns of people traveling or paying a lot of money and not being able to see, you know, their favorite players or, you know, the draw to go out to a game. And like, that's a problem. It's like, yeah, exactly. Right. Like if you go to Dallas or something, it's a problem. And that's something they really need to try and figure out. There's not an easy solution to that. And it simply might be, you've got to play, you know, 70% of the games. Otherwise they start prorating your money. And as they start to head towards a renegotiation of the collective bargaining agreement, that I think is going to be a big sticking point. And that's something that could hold it up. And maybe we end up in like another lockout situation like we have in the past. Hopefully we avoid that, but that needs to be kind of number one to make this really kind of more in favor of the fans and something they've definitely gotten away from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to. I mean, we've had many group discussions in our group messages about this. You know, I feel like some of it is probably management that's pushing it. You know, wanting the guys rest. Analytics got so much involved now. You know, they're seeing the numbers like that. But I mean, I actually heard something today, and I want to say, I think I was listening to Colin Cowherd. I'm pretty sure it's who I was heard on. They actually ordered a discussion. Rick Bucher, I think, was with them.
Oh yeah, always.
And they made a good point. Said, why don't you make the games 40 minutes?
Oh,
maybe back down the minutes some. And instead of doing say 82 to 72 games, everybody's worried about the history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Minutes will still affect it some, but you're not taking away as much. The franchises are still getting the money for ticket sales. They're still, you know, all that kind of stuff.
And you'd start to see players play all 40 in a game too.
I think you would. I think you'd see them playing more minutes.
Come playoff time for sure.
Yeah. You can. Yeah, like LeBron would play 40 with them Cavs.
Like I remember Jimmy Butler not like coming out the game when he was with Philly.
Oh, he'd play 48. Jimmy Butler don't care.
Yeah.
But I mean, something like that, I could see maybe be a good thing to lean for because something's got to be changed. I mean, it's getting every year. It's worse and worse.
No, that's a, you know, honestly, almost like a great option. I don't know if that would still necessarily stop it, right? Just like I don't know if even shortening the NBA season would prevent load management, right? If you dropped it down to 66 games, would that end up fixing this problem where guys just play 40 games and that's that? And you mentioned a really good point though, of all that lost gate revenue. And look, they're all trying to make money out here, so they don't want to look at options like that. Shortening games by a little bit maybe could do something like that. And it would be fun to see how many guys would end up playing like all 40 minutes in a game, or at least do that once a season or something like that. Because, you know, some guys, Jimmy Butler is like salivating at this idea and being like, I'm just going to play all 40 in all of them. So it's a fun idea. That's really intriguing and not something that I had heard about or thought about before, but I don't hate that at all. Like, I think that could be a good solution.
Yeah, that's definitely a very interesting idea.
It caught my ear. I was tuned in when they were talking about that. Makes sense.
I mean, they do it in college.
That's exactly right.
You know,
That's my first thought.
College to NFL is the same number of minutes.
Yeah.
Why would it have to be different for basketball? You know?
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
I know he's got to go. So I mean, we'll
Yeah.
keep it short.
So I guess we'll get two predictions from you. What's the Pelicans, I guess, situation at the end of the year, record-wise, or play in, playoff, out, whatever? And who do you think is in the NBA championship in the winter?
I think I'm going to be optimistic here. I think the Pelicans have to get into the postseason through the play-in tournament. I think they're going to finish as the 7th seed, so they only need to win 1 game out of 2 chances, which gives them a pretty good spot to be in, I think. And honestly, for the championship, that's going to be tough. I think either in the West, I'm going to probably go with the Phoenix Suns. They get Kevin Durant back on Wednesday night tonight. I'm very curious to see how that's going to go. And that's just so much talent that I'm going to hate that team. And then on the other side, I'm going to go with Boston. I think they've really figured some things out. They've got a good new head coach in there for the 2nd year in a row. They are so deep. I think that's going to carry them in the postseason. I think they're going to win the Eastern Conference Finals in like 7 games over the Bucks, and it's going to be an awesome series.
That's going to be an awesome series.
It's going to be an awesome series. And I'm going to be so annoyed then when Phoenix probably ends up winning the NBA title.
Nope. I can't see Chris Paul win a championship. I don't care. I don't need that. Or
Just
Devin
don't want to live
Booker.
in that world.
Nope. Wrong answer because the Warriors are winning it all. But yeah. Anything else y'all got to say?
Hey, just let them get in, huh?
Yeah, I'm telling you, when Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green start and play every game, we've never lost a series. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. All right. Well, this is awesome. Great interview. Learned some stuff. Yeah. And got some of our thoughts, I guess, confirmed from someone that knows a little more than us. So. All right. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
Absolutely.